Hail Guardians, as a Titan main of 10 years, this is the Warlock build that I've kept coming back to since the Final Shape's release. This is FELWINTER'S Slide. The main goal of this build is to spam Lightning Surge, aka Electro Slide, Arcane Needle, and most importantly, finishers. You'll be disorienting and weakening the battlefield with near 100% uptime on abilities, you'll be nigh unkillable with plenty of damage resist and healing sources to back you up from your subclass and mods. This build is catered to anyone who wants to get deep into the action Titan style, but on the Warlock class. The core of this build is FELWINTER'S Helm. Its description is as follows. Powered melee final blows create a burst of energy that weakens nearby targets. Finishers and final blows against more powerful targets increase the radius of the burst and the length of the weakening effect. Three very important things to keep in mind. Number 1. The weakening effect is always a 30% debuff, which is the same as Tether and Tractor Cannon. Unlike other exotics whose potency scales with enemy rank, the raw damage increase stays consistent. You can finish a red bar and get the same damage boost as a Tether against the boss. Activating the effect on higher rank enemies simply increases the duration and the radius. Secondly, this exotic weakens and disorients enemies. While this isn't a formal suppression like suppressor grenades, meaning it won't work on overloads, it's still more than enough to disable enemies in close range, increasing your safety dramatically. Not to mention Lightning Surge jolts anyway, so we have overloads covered. Finally, finishers increase the duration of the effect. Being that finishers have no cooldown, no timer, and can provide additional effects from our mod selections, they add a lot of insurance to the build. We're combining this exotic with Lightning Surge, which allows us to blink forward and call down an AoE of arc energy, jolting targets and dealing enough damage to one-shot red bar enemies, which helps us get the close range chain started. So let's run through the whole build from top to bottom, explaining every selection as we go along. As with pretty much all Prismatic builds, you have plenty of selections to suit the build to your playstyle and the activity at hand, so I'll mention other options as we go along and why I picked what I did. The super selection is Needlestorm, for one simple reason, Woven Mail, aka 45% damage resist. Facet of Purpose gives us a subclass buff depending on our super selection. Given that this is a close range build and that we're 100% using Devour, Phoenix Dive, and Recuperation, damage resistance is more important than Restoration, which is what Song of Flame would be giving us. If you really can't let go of Song of Flame, it's certainly an option, but you will be squishier in the neutral game. Winter's Wrath is also a decent pick. It's a roaming super, so it charges pretty quickly, and also gives Frost Armor, a lower damage resist than Woven Mail, but it also synergizes with this episode's artifact. Nova Bomb isn't really needed unless we're in a boss-killing environment, and for whatever reason Needlestorm just won't cut it. We'll be using Bulwark Finisher anyway, so Void Overshields will be plentiful. Storm Trance is just not needed at all, Ad Clear is covered by our base abilities, and Lightning Surge will keep us amplified. Class ability of choice is Phoenix Dive. It's quicker to activate, keeps you mobile, and instantly gives you health. Not much more to say. For the pace of this build, rifts do not compare. Melee of choice is Arcane Needle. The obvious reason is 3 charges for a Lightning Surge, but it also provides a lot of upfront damage and range, making it good to use on its own. It also inflicts Unraveling, which will help out our Darkness Transcendence energy and give a sizable boost to AoE damage. No other melee comes close, so lock in Arcane Needle 100% of the time. Grenade of choice is Vortex, for reliable damage and its pull effect on enemies. Again, no other option really compares. Cold Snap and Healing Grenades provide CC and safety accordingly, but when you play this build correctly, you won't need either of them. Aspects are Lightning Surge and Devour. Lightning Surge gives us mobility, jolts, and, most importantly, looks cool as hell. This is your main vessel to get in and out of combat and makes the build much more dynamic and fun to play. There is no replacement. While we will be spamming class abilities and thus potentially opening the door for Hellion, Devour is just too good to pass on. Leak Watchers do next to nothing for us, and Weaver's Call is a waste since we're not dealing nearly as much strand damage as any other type of damage. Fragments are Balance, Sacrifice, Hope, Protection, and Purpose. Balance keeps our ability uptime high, since kills with our Grenade and Lightning Surge will give us melee energy. Sacrifice enables more Dark Trance energy gains, which we'd otherwise be lacking since most of our ability spam will be light-based. This is probably the most replaceable fragment though, especially if you're considering Facet of Grace, as kinetic weapons generate trance energy very quickly. Hope allows us to spam more Phoenix Dives for more uses of our "Oh no" button. We'll also be taking certain mods that will make our class ability more valuable. Protection is just straight up damage resist when we're surrounded, and even more damage resist when we're transcended. This build wants to be surrounded often, so it's just a no-brainer. And Purpose is core in every Prismatic build as far as I'm concerned, so it's also an auto-take. Fragments you should avoid include Courage and Defiance, even though they look good on paper. The damage increase from Courage is 10%, which isn't bad, but not as worth a slot in my opinion. This isn't the super high damage, kill everything build. If it was, we'd be using an exotic class item with Spirit of Syntheseps. This is a utility build, so plus 10 damage just isn't needed. Defiance seems great on paper, since we want to use finishers a bunch, but the effects are Jolt, Scorch, Volatile, Slow, and Sever. We get Jolt anyway, Scorch doesn't really help us besides a little bit of extra damage, Volatile doesn't do much at all, Slow doesn't help since we're not getting slow from other sources, hence we can't really freeze, and Sever would be good, but since nearby enemies will be disoriented, they won't shoot you anyway, so Sever ends up being a waste. Stat Split, max out Resilience and Strength before anything else. After that, Discipline is going to be your best bet. Recovery seems vital, but since Facet of Hope cuts our class ability cooldown by a flat 60% at any recovery level, even low recovery gets your class ability back very quickly. Core mods are Heavy-Handed on the gloves, Resist on the chest piece, Invigoration and Absolution on the boots, and Bulwark Finisher and Powerful Attraction on your class item. I highly recommend stacking Heavy-Handed at least twice over, if not 3 times, to really chain orbs back to back to back. Resistances help keep you alive, of course. Invigoration gives you an instant health boost as opposed to Better Already, which gives you regen that can be interrupted by any damage. Absolution gives you a little bit of all your abilities back, slap that on with Invigoration, which stack together, to keep your melee energy high. Powerful Attraction causes all nearby orbs to be picked up when using Phoenix Dive, so all of these mods trigger instantly, plus you get instant armor charge. Bulwark Finisher trades out that otherwise unused armor charge for a Void Overshield, 70% damage resist while it's up, for even more safety. Proximity Ward is another very strong option for keeping you alive, albeit a little bit overkill. I'd recommend it more for Master Plus activities, or if you're doing a mechanic of some kind in a raid or dungeon, and you really can't afford to die. For your artifact mods, if you're watching this during episode 2, then we have some excellent options that synergize very well with the build. If you're watching this later, I would recommend taking anything that involves augmenting your melee ability, damage, energy, anything that's going to give you finishers, damage resistance, basically anything that allows you to be more in the middle of the battle. Authorized mods melee for cheaper firepower, Total Carnage so finishers give more damage resistance, The Thick of It for more armor charge, and Curative Orbs for more total orbs of power. Group these last 2 mods with a refined tonic of Brawling, that's a legendary one, for increased handling and health. Armor of Aramis is also good if you're getting Frost Armor, and Conductive Cosmic Crystal isn't bad either, especially if your teammates are using Stasis a lot. I would stray away from Emergency Flare, as the mod it reduces the cost of, Emergency Reinforcements, occupies a chest slot that you'd much rather use for a Resist mod, and its effect is only 10% damage resist, and only activates when you're low health. Skip it, it's not worth it. Weapons. Slice is pretty good, since you're spamming Phoenix Dive anyway. Pugilist for melee energy back. Besides that, you can really use whatever you want. This build sustains itself enough from finishers, transcendence, and ability regen that really any weapon is viable. Run anti-champion weapons if you need them, if not, go crazy. One thing I will say is that this build can find itself a little bit short on Dark Transcendence energy. Consider taking either a kinetic weapon or a Lost Signal or a The Call sidearm, something along those lines just to make sure you're able to top off on Dark Trance energy quickly. More so than the obvious kind of perks like Pugilist and all of that good stuff, I think you should focus on origin traits and things that are going to boost your ability energy or maybe coincide with your melee somehow. Things like Bray Legacy and Bray Inheritance for more ability regen, Cast No Shadows for auto reloads, Cursed Thrall for some explosions, and Indomitability, since we'll most likely be using Needlestorm. Every time we get a kill on an enemy with any weapon from the Brave Arsenal, we'll actually be getting back some melee energy. Now, the super obvious fly on the wall is Monte Carlo, and I have run Monte Carlo, and Monte Carlo is great in this build. At the point where you're running Monte Carlo, you might as well run Facet of Grace, because you'll just be getting trance that much quicker. And I don't want to make it seem like Monte Carlo is a bad choice, because it's an excellent choice. It's just that depending on the content and whether or not Monte Carlo is actually in the artifact, it could have kind of variable usability. Definitely give it a shot, but again, if you're going to do that, might as well run Facet of Grace. Okay, so how do we actually play this build? Step 1. We're going to Electro Slide into a group of enemies, ideally singling out one or more red bars. Felwinter's Helm will activate, weakening and disorienting. If nothing dies somehow, either slide again or look for a finisher. Step 2. Repeat, really. If you don't have a melee charge or can't get a finisher, get to safety, whittle down an enemy until they're finishable, finish them, and start again from step 1. The build really plays itself, so long as you can find finishers and manage your melees, you're golden, you're good to go. The number one tip for this build, and I cannot stress this enough, you must be aggressive to make this build work, and you have to constantly be looking for finishers. I play on PC, default finisher key is C. I will spam C every moment I am in combat. If I can get a finisher, I need to get a finisher. Finishers make this build go round. As a 10-year Titan main, this has quickly become one of my favorite builds in Destiny. Give it a shot, focus on killing minor enemies first, spam finishers, and be aggressive. If you found this video interesting, helpful, or overall enjoy yourself, a like and sub would be greatly appreciated. I plan on posting a lot more slightly off-meta builds like this, so stick around for some more tomfoolery. Traveler be with you. Have a good one, Guardians.